The governments of Kenya and the UK are set to co-host the first ever Global Disability Summit in London on Tuesday next week. Kenya's high-level delegation to the summit include the Cabinet Secretary for Labour and Social Protection, Ukur Yatani, the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Urban Development and Housing, James Macharia, and the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Henry Rotich. On this show, the significance of the summit.
Disability is here, and these are people, quite a number of them are active, people who are sharp, well educated.
The summit in London is helping us to re-examine where we have come from and where we are.
Why was Kenya chosen as a co-host?
We wanted to co-chair this conference from the start with a developing country so that we get both perspectives really clearly going into it. And we chose Kenya because Kenya has done some great things on disability.
The issues at hand.
Purpose to include persons with disabilities in economic development so that persons with disabilities are not a burden to this country.
If you are discriminated, it's like you are locked somewhere. But if they stop the discrimination, they let you free and you're able to fly to greater heights.
Welcome to the program. I'm Alex Chamwada, and we begin the show with the following fact sheet.
The World Health Organization gives 10 to 15% of every population as people with disability.
We have about 6.5 million persons in Kenya. What we lack is data. And this is a very important aspect, because profiling persons with disability, we need to know what number we are dealing with so that the resources can be given towards that. Imagine for the last 10 years, we were able only to register 500,000 people.
Yes, according to Kenya's National Council for Persons with Disability, registration of PWDs is a major challenge.
We are at the 47 counties in the country, but we only have one officer. You can imagine one officer running Turkana, one officer running Marsabit. So we need to increase the interaction between our officers and the persons with disability.
These are some of the issues at hand ahead of the Global Disability Summit organized by the governments of Kenya and the UK in collaboration with International Disability Alliance, among other partners. The summit offers an opportunity to various stakeholders to engage in self-assessment in regard to commitment to disability inclusion, share success stories, identify existing gaps, and come up with measures and solutions to address the gaps. The summit aims to celebrate persons with disability who have made accomplishments in various fields, to raise awareness on the plight of persons with disability, and to get commitments from governments and stakeholders to do more. For the Chamwada Report, I'm Michael Zimanji.
Here in Nairobi, the British High Commissioner to Kenya hosted a reception for the Kenyan delegation that is expected to travel to London. And during the reception, the UK Secretary of State for International Development had the following message for Kenya.
As the UK's Secretary of State for International Development, inclusion of people with disabilities is incredibly important to me. Globally, an estimated 1 billion people have some form of disability as they continue to face appalling levels of stigma, discrimination and abuse. All too often, they miss out on the opportunities that should be the right of every single person. That is why I am delighted to be hosting the Global Disability Summit in London on the 24th of July with the Government of Kenya and the International Disability Alliance. The summit will bring together leaders from the private sector, governments, donor agencies and charities to galvanise momentum and commitment to deliver real and lasting change for people with disabilities across the globe. I would like to thank Cabinet Secretary Yatane and his team at the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection for your partnership and your hard work to make sure that this summit is a real success. Kenya is rightly recognised as a leader on disability inclusion, and I was fortunate enough to see firsthand during my visit in January some of your amazing schemes, your Persons with Severe Disabilities Cash Transfer Programme, for example, which is helping to transform lives. And I'm proud that the UK government has supported this programme and many others on disability inclusion in Kenya. I also want to acknowledge everyone in that room today who was involved in the fantastic mini-summit that took place in Nairobi on the 24th of May, and all the follow-up work that you've been doing. It's with your hard work that the Kenyan delegation will come to London with a package of prioritised and ambitious commitments that will truly transform the lives of Kenyans living with disabilities and those that support them and care for them. I'm really sorry that I won't be able to welcome every single one of you in London, but I know that your views will be well represented by the Kenya delegation. Following the summit, we will of course all need to work together collectively to help deliver the commitments that that summit has made. I'd like to end by also thanking your host today, the British High Commissioner to Kenya, Mr. Nick Haley, and to each and every one of you for your role in helping Kenya reach its full potential by helping all people with disabilities reach theirs. Thank you.
When persons with disability participate in competitive sporting activities like this annual event known as Hope for the Future Run, the message is clear: leave no one behind. This event is organized by the Henry Wanyoike Foundation, whose founder is Kenyan runner Henry Wanyoike, who has excelled in various races. He is a triple world record holder in 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, and the full marathon for the visually impaired.
I thought it is good we start something similar from what I've been doing in the past in other countries, and also I can be able to show my people in my area that they can also make it, and we are trying to tap the new talents.
The annual event normally takes place in Kikuyu in Kiambu County, and this year's run took place on 4th June. It was part of the Leave No One Behind campaign ahead of the Global Disability Summit in London.
And this is about getting all countries from around the world together with the UK and Kenya running the show to talk about how we make life better for disabled people, how we get more disabled people into education, how we get more disabled people into jobs, how we use technology to make things better. So we're really proud to be working with Kenya in that and to be working with Mr. Wanyoike on these really important issues.
This was the 12th edition of the run.
I feel proud and I feel being honored to be given this opportunity. Sababu si kawaida walemavu kufanya kitu kama hii. Sababu ninawapatia changamoto wale watu ambao wako na uwezo na hawawezi fanya kitu kama hii.
Persons with disability in Kenya do not want to be left behind. Those with albinism also want their voices heard. During this year's International Albinism Awareness Day on June the 13th, the National Council for Persons with Disability sought to bring to light that albinism is not inability.
And actually we are here to showcase people what we got in us, what we want people to know about us, what we desire to inspire the society with. Yeah, and that's why we're here.
The theme of the campaign was Shining Our Light to the World. The National Council for Persons with Disabilities says Kenya will be going to London with a basketful of milestones despite the existing gaps.
One of the main things Kenya has been doing is about social protection, what we call the cash transfer. Kenya gives about 1.2 billion Kenya shillings every year to 47,000 households of PWD. This is a milestone, and this budget is always there every year. Number two, we do economic empowerment programs where money is given for income-generating activities for poor persons with disability groups across the country. Those are two major issues that will surely uplift the life of persons with disability.
Back to the reception by the British High Commissioner to Kenya, And the High Commissioner sought to explain the significance of the Global Disability Summit and why Kenya, as a co-host,
we wanted to co-chair this conference from the start with a developing country so that we get both perspectives really clearly going into it. And we chose Kenya because Kenya has done some great things on disability. There are some really great disability role models. Some of them are here at this cocktail today who are showing Kenyans what can be done despite disability. Kenya has some great laws in place, some great provisions in the constitution for disability. Of course there are challenges in Kenya, there are challenges in the UK as well. But Kenya is really leading the way in Africa in some of these issues, and we're proud to partner with you.
Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Labour and Social Protection, Ukuru Yatani, said this was a testimony to the bondage between Kenya and the UK.
Not only on this particular summit, but historically we share so much, and we are actually grateful that we are able to share one platform and address the world on one podium.
The Cabinet Secretary will be leading Kenya's delegation to the summit in London.
And we have able friends who are here. They are going to make sure that the good things that we are doing in this country are put on the world radar, on the global radar.
At the summit, delegates will address the successes and gaps in disability inclusion and the way forward.
It will cover significant areas on addressing stigma and discrimination, economic empowerment, and education inclusion, among others. The realization of the summit objectives will not only require concerted national effort, but also global attention to attain and mitigate.
The Global Disability Summit is expected to accelerate the effort by various stakeholders to live to their commitment on disability inclusion.
The organizations represented here have the opportunity to express solidarity with the delegates who will represent them in the summit, and this will ensure that issues that affect them find their way to the floor during the summit.
There are 1 billion people with disabilities, and 4/5 of those people live in developing countries, and often poverty and disability go together. So if we're going to raise the poorest out of poverty, if we're going to make sure no one gets left behind, we've got to focus on disability as an issue.
Still to come.
If you are discriminated, it's like you are locked somewhere.
Persons with disabilities are not a burden to this country, but are partners in economic development.
The issues stakeholders want addressed at the first ever Global Disability Summit that is set to take place in London on Tuesday next week. Welcome back. Today we are discussing the significance of the first ever Global Disability Summit that will take place at the Olympic Park Stadium in London on Tuesday next week. Through the eyes of Alice Wairimo, a student at Uthiru Girls High School, here are some of the challenges children and youth in schools and learning institutions face.
There's this time that I went to get enrolled to a school, but I could not be enrolled because of my height. That for me made me feel like it was a bit disappointing, but I had to just understand and know that discrimination still exists. You find that in most places, you find they have a chair which is high, and if I'm not able to get on the top of the chair, and if someone helps me to get on top, my legs are still hanging, and if they hang, they tend to swell. And I get to become so tired sitting up there. So for me, that is always a challenge. Even getting to some matatus, I'm like, will I find a seat where I'll be comfortable while I'll sit? It's a bit challenge. At Uthiru High School, I'm able to cope up because they have looked into the things that they can change. They have been able to change. And those that have not been able to be changed, there are still some process of getting to know how to go about them.
Wairimo's story is a tale of resilience and transformation, a success story worth emphasizing in the Leave No One Behind campaign.
Alice Wairimo was born in Muranga, but because of her disability, her parents neglected her, and a well-wisher rescued her, and a well-wisher who knew Feed the Children, and that's how Feed the Children was able to get Alice Wairimo, and since then it's been a journey together. When we got her, we knew Alice has a lot of potential in her life, despite small body. And we took her through the assessment, and she was able to fit in a mainstream school. And that's why we took her to primary school, and together we were able to work with her up to secondary school. Now currently she's Form 3 in Uthiru Girls, and she's doing well.
Every child, even if one has disability, is a potential, has potential like any other person, and they should be set free. If you are discriminated, it's like you are locked somewhere. But if they stop the discrimination, they let you free and you're able to fly to greater heights.
The country director for Save the Children Kenya, Wang La, says parents or guardians with children with disability should not feel shy about the status of those children.
Children, when they are born and they have facing a lot of challenges, and then especially I think it's the parents and the adults. Out of I think good intention, they want to protect children, but one way actually by they are overprotecting the children, they hiding the children at home, the children have been lost their opportunity to access to societies. So I think that's where I see the first challenge where children facing, and then also I think children be facing challenges also when they have to access to basic health and education services, when school does not have accessible facilities for children, or they have different reasons to refuse children with disability to access basic education. We are denying actually a very, very basic right for children.
And it is argued that disability inclusion should begin at home.
Inclusion is very broad. We start right from the home. Is this child accepted by the family members? We've had quite a number of children with disabilities being neglected even by family members or hidden so that they don't give an opportunity to go to school and also to interact with their children.
But are these challenges unique to Kenya? Gertrude Musuruve is a nominated senator representing persons with disability.
You'll find that when we are talking of issues of lack of accessibility, it's not just an issue of Kenya. It is an issue that you find in New York. It is an issue that you find in Canada. It is an issue that you find all over. So I want to say, Alex, that different countries are going to exchange on what is happening in issues of disability, the challenges, and how the various nations can actually support and help persons with disabilities, so that as they support persons with disabilities, they're able to really go by what the United Nations Convention on Persons with Disabilities Act says.
The senator, who will be on the Kenyan delegation to London, says she is concerned at the slow pace of implementation of inclusion of persons with disability in public appointments and representation.
The Constitution says clearly 5% of appointive and elective positions should be given to persons with disabilities. And Alex, I want to tell you that we have not even reached 1%.
Dr. Samuel Kabuye, who was part of the organizing team in Kenya for the participation at the Global Summit, says the summit will revitalize the disability inclusion debate.
London Summit helps us to re-examine ourselves, to recommit ourselves, and to come back and to follow up on those commitments. And this, for me, is another era in the disability work in Kenya, because it begins a totally new period of looking at disability and moving up with it from where we are.
The Global Disability Summit in London is expected to yield sustainable commitments so that the occasion is not just any other talk show.
For us, what does that mean? They are highlighting issues of persons with disability in very poor countries. For example, Kenya and other African countries. In this way, it will help us mobilize resources. It will also help us to highlight issues of legislation, whereby programs and laws will be developed to the advantage of persons with disability. Gaining such an international image means that the world will be facing towards persons with disability and give give enough funds for that purpose.
The fact that we've been recognized and requested to co-host is a is a big diplomatic score for us, because we are, you know, in the heart of business, in the heart of the matter. We are very grateful to the FID that's going to the main sponsor, but as a ministry, we are also playing in terms of all necessary preparation. And quite a number of senior people in this country and within the region have been invited, so that at the end of the conference, at the end of the summit, they can now go and take proactive measures, and particularly at the policy development level, that this is a matter that needs to be taken seriously and needs to be, you know, have that international face.
I think what I've learned is that it's all about how you see yourself. If you decide that you are blessed and you have potential and you can do great things, then disability really doesn't matter. Of course there are obstacles, of course there are things to be overcome, and I don't underestimate those. But I think the lessons that we learn are about people that decide to take control of their lives and realize their potential. And that's really inspiring.
Disability is not inability. That is the key message there. And people are abled differently. Well, let's see what transpires at the first ever Global Disability Summit that will take place at the Olympic Park in London on Tuesday next week. The Chams media crew will be there. Expect special reports in the course of next week from the summit. Until then, I'm your host, Alex Chamwada. Bye-bye.